that so many people still defend Stephen Darby, even though he verbatim said that Jesus is not the Son of God. Jesus is absolutely both the Son of Man and the Son of God. That's the doctrine known as the hypostatic union. So if Stephen Darby affirmed that Jesus was the Son of Man, but rejected that Jesus was the Son of God, that's heresy. I said all that to say I did not slander that man, but y'all are slandering me by accusing me of slandering him, which I didn't do. I watched the whole sermon. What I need for y'all to do is explain to me what Stephen meant when he said that Jesus was not the Son of God.
Hey y'all, this is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Thank you for once again coming back home, family. For those of you that happen to be new here, welcome. I definitely hope that you hear something today that will persuade you to stay. Now, if you are returning, welcome back home, family. Hey y'all. So y'all already saw that clip. Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer on this and say, I don't understand when people speak on the dead. It's very dangerous. And if you study biblical culture based off on the culture of where these people were, you will see that in the Old Testament, the Shadaim, or what Christianity mistakenly calls demons, because back then all demons were not malevolent beings. They could be neutral, they could be benevolent. They were just looked at as protective deities that were outside of the constraints of the Israelites. So when you had the Assyrians and the Babylonians, they have their own protective deities. Just as when we begin to look into the book of Psalms, when it says that goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives. So those of us who keep the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, we have our own protective deities that literally walk with us and lead us and guide us. And then the nation of Israel, we have our high Melech by the name of Michael, who goes to war on our behalf. We know that we have Gabriel, who seems to be y'all favorite because y'all give him credit with popping Mary off. And that's what we're going to talk about. That's heresy. Go look into Genesis, the 6th chapter. And before some of you come under with your false doctrine by saying, those were the son of Seths, angels cannot marry, and blue, 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 and boo, 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 boo. You really need to look into the Hebrew meaning. Those didn't have nothing to do with no Sethites. Those were the sons of Elohim who were coming down. And whether you want to say doing science experiments, how we see now, or you want to begin to say that they cohabitated with women, whatever doctrine you want to believe in, they came down, they sinned against mankind, they sinned against women, they sinned against the earth, they sinned against the animals. You guys have to really realize that that knowledge decreased. Like, we wax cold every day. There was higher technology than there is now. And if the word begins to tell us that the end times will be as the days of Noah, and we see how knowledge is increasing now with science, and we see the transhumanism and the transgender and all of these other things, what was done before will be done again. Let's begin to talk about the historical Christ. When we begin to look at the prophecy of Moses, which many of us do not really know about, I was saving this. I was really trying to save this. So when you begin to study on the Midrash, the Mishnah, the oral traditions of the Israelites that started when they were in captivity, you had the Jerusalem Mishnah, and then you had when they started writing the Babylonian Talmud, when they were under Nebuchadnezzar, and then when they were under Grecian rule, where the Apocrypha was written and it was taken out of the Bible. This is when you begin to have the Septuagint, which is the Greek interpretation of the Old Testament. And this is because that's when the Israelites started speaking Greek under Alexander the Great, under Antiochus Epiphanes the Fourth. Yeah, there we go. And so by time, so when we go back to Moses and his historicity, and you begin to look at his birth was prophesied by his sister Miriam to his father and to his mother. It's extensive to know that this took place during the same time when Pharaoh had a dream that a deliverer, saviors, if you look at the book of Obadiah, We had saviors. Jael, the woman who began to drill a nail in the ear of Sisera, was called a deliverer. We were delivered by multiple people. Let's begin to talk about it. So Miriam prophesied the birth of her brother during a time that men children were being killed. So guess what her daddy did to her mama? He put her away because he said that it would do him better to not see the birth and the death of his son than to stay at home and see it. He sure did. But Miriam was like, Daddy, that wouldn't be righteous. Like, what are you doing? We walked the bam. So what did he do? He came back home. So let's begin to continue. When we even begin to look at the prophecy that the Melech, because this is what we're talking about, that the Melech gave Abraham, that his wife Sarah will bring forth a son. She shall bring forth. So do that mean that when actually that was Yod-Heh-Wav talking to him, because the Melech, all three of them came down as men. So does that mean that do that spoken word, Sarah got pregnant? No, it don't, right? But I know some of y'all gonna be like, well, no, because the angel wasn't just talking to her. She was in the house laughing. Okay, so let's use a better example. What about the father and mother of Samson? When that Melech came down and told them that she was gonna get pregnant, did that Melech get her pregnant? I'm just wondering. And the Melech is a messenger, a border crosser. And his name was Secret because they wanted to offer a sacrifice to him. But he said, no, offer a sacrifice to Yod-Heh-Wav only. But we see with Abraham, the sacrifice wasn't rejected because that was Yod-Heh-Wav himself. Let's continue to the book of Isaiah. And this is what trips people up because they want to make the historical Yeshua Bar Yosef, this pre-existing being that was born in the beginning with no seed of compilation, born through a virgin, born through all of these means that would be considered blasphemies according to the Israelite Bible. See, sis, you don't have enough history in you to even question Stephen Darby in this way. He's not even alive. You don't have enough historicity to realize that the New Testament has been rejected by our forefathers before this time. So let's get into it. In the book of Isaiah, the 7th chapter and the 14th verse, when Emmanuel was prophesied, why don't y'all look up in those verses before then? This is the Assyrian captivity. Isaiah was married. Hezekiah was married. The birth of Hezekiah's son, I can't pronounce it, it's not in front of me right now, it starts with the S, meant that a remnant shall remain. This is when they were taken out into captivity. And when we begin to look at 2 Chronicles, the 30th chapter, you will see that a remnant of the tribe of Judah still remained in the land. And they went and kept Passover with Hezekiah after the majority of them was taken out to Babylonian captivity. So boys being born to be a deliverer, boys' name being given to their parents as a sign and a symbol of prophecy that's soon to come is not foreign to the Near Eastern concept. But y'all are so caught up on the New Testament that you don't understand it because you skip over the Old. So when you get down to Isaiah 17 and 14, and it talks about the name Emmanuel and that a virgin, that word virgin right there is Alma. That's my grandmother's name, my mama's mama. It literally means young woman, damsel, a young woman of marrying age. That's what that word virgin right there means. The word virgin for untouched is bet. I think it's Betlauh. That means never had been with a man like ever before. That word is not used for Isaiah's wife or for Mary. And in Near Eastern culture, we see in the time of Moses and in the time of Rachel and all of these other women, when they never had babies before, they always had handmaidens, wet nurses with them to assist them in childbirth. It was part of the culture. So if Mary was a virgin, where is her handmaiden? Why was she looking for somewhere to give birth? Where are her elders? If this was her first baby, right? We have to be historical with things. Since the age of 12, I was preaching and teaching on virgin birth and the 7 last words of Jesus, and preaching good night Friday night services. What's that? Good Friday, and then preaching on Sunday. So trust me, I know the doctrines back and forth. We've been indoctrinized by the Roman Catholic Church grossly. Let's continue. So when we begin to look at the doctrine of the Ebionites, who was ruled by James, the brother of Yeshua, what did they begin to say? James, his brother. See, these people decided to follow James over Peter because he was the brother of Christ. And these people wholly rejected Paul and considered him a heretic, an apostate against the law. And they only took the book of Matthew as historically accurate in the New Testament. Because all of those other books, most people don't know who they was written by. They was written in Greek. The book of Revelation was considered apocrypha because people don't even know how to study that, not even really realizing that a lot of that already happened before in the time of the Nicene Council and the Council of Jerusalem, the Church of Smyrna, where Polycarp was killed and slaughtered. So when we begin to look at the Ebionites, the rejection and the heresy that they were accused of came from Roman, Greek, and Egyptian church fathers, converts, not Israelites. And when there were some Israelites doing this, they had been Christianized, Hellenized, Catholicized. So James began to teach that Christ was born between his mom and daddy, Mary and Joseph, and that he was not pre-existent in time. And I'm writing a book that's about to break down like so much stuff. His name was present. Bara, B-A-R means bar, son. Dabar goes back to logos, rhema, a word. And when you look at that's dialect, which means door, and bar, door of the sun. That does not mean that his body was physically present. Because there's also Mishnahs that begin to say that the name of Abraham and I believe Elijah and Moses, somebody else, were at the beginning of creation as well. They believe, the Ebionites say that he was the Son of Man and became adopted as the Son of God. And when you begin to deduce scripture correctly, this indeed is true. Now, this verse in the book of Matthew was added in. Let's see, though, when it begins to talk about the sign of the dove at the baptism, that scripture wasn't originally in there, but I'm going to break it down. so that we can see and explain some things, right? So at his baptism is when he became the Son of God. And he was initiated into the Melchizedek priesthood under the Zadoks. His uncle, Zacharias, was a Levite under the charge of Abiah. And he was in the temple around the Feast of Pentecost. And he was prophesied to by Amalek that he would have a son, although his wife Elizabeth happened to be barren and without child. And because he doubted and questioned, he was mute. And then his son John the Baptist, who was the forerunner but came in the same spirit of Elijah, which is how Micah, I believe, 3:9 became fulfilled, because John the Baptist came in his spirit. So you still have some Jewish converts that are still waiting for Elijah to return. But there's also oral tradition that states that Elijah is one of the 4 carpenters that will begin to push the Gentiles out of the land, according to the book of Zechariah. Sis, you still keeping up? Just let me know if I need to slow down a little bit. Because when I was still in Christianity, being taught by my mommy and my daddy, Pastor Stephen Darby is what I reached for, because it still was churchy, and he knew he was an Israelite. But I had to keep on digging, because I said, this ain't it. This is still too close to what I'm doing. The level of spiritual, you know what, I'm not even going to go there, but keep your mouth off Pastor Darby. Don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. You really don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. So the Ebionites are stated to have the closest description of the actual Jesus, the actual Yeshua, and them being counted as heterics. It's absolutely crazy. This is what historians say. So when you begin to look at the book of Matthew, when he got adopted into that, right? Because when you look at Chronicles and the 24 elders, which is going to give you your 24 elders in the book of Revelation, they all had different charges to keep. They did not fully keep their charge, so the Zadoks came in. And the Zadoks will be the one who bring the sacrifice to David in the kingdom, and David will sacrifice it to Melchizedek. So when he got baptized and the dove was up there, and he talked about being in the belly of a whale 3 days, right? What if I began to tell you that the name Jonah is dove in Hebrew? And Jonah being in the belly of a whale for 3 days. This is how John the Baptist knew, according to that sign and symbol. Oh, yeah, this is him. He's going to go down in the grave for 3 days. Now, some people don't even believe that happened. They don't believe the resurrection happened. But we're not going to get into that. I just came here to say that people who study the language, people who study the culture, people who study the Old Testament, people who study the historicity, all of us are not going to consistently and continue to buy in to the virgin birth when we know that that's Babylonian in origin. Sis, have you heard of Semiramis and Tammuz or Tammuz? Have you heard of Isis? You've not heard of virgin births in different cultures, and this is how we end up celebrating Christ's birthday on December 25th, when actually him and John the Baptist's birthdays are interchangeable. Passover and Feast of Sukkot, because the month of April and the month of September are birth counted as New Year's. One is ecclesiastical and one is the civil New Year. So when John the Baptist is born through the time of the Passover, and Yeshua Bar Yosef is born during the time of Feast of Sukkot, which means ingathering. This will begin to fulfill the prophecy of the epithet Emmanuel, meaning God dwells among us. Because when he was born in the time of the tabernacle, and he tabernacled with us. That's the Feast of Sukkot. That's when Christ was born. I'm just saying, make sure that you are good and oily and historically like accurate and sound, and that you're not pushing Roman Catholic doctrine off when you come to correct somebody. You have to do that. But when you are speaking on the dead has their own protective deities. The graveyard has their own protective deities. But that may sound too African, too Near Eastern, too biblical for y'all to begin to realize. The grave is not a place where you want to put your mouth on. I don't think people really think before they go to talk. And it's not to say that people can't be questioned and words, doctrines can't be broken down or whatever, and you being messy. Trying to get people to explain what a dead man meant. You need to sit down, shut up, go into prayer, and ask the Most High to recalibrate your foul spirit that will cause you to get on this internet and make a video about a man who is no longer with us. You a coward. You a coward. I don't like stuff like that. But we gonna keep it cute. Sis, keep it on mute. This video happened to pop up. I know it was a year ago, but hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And you don't even know that you are Israelite. So as a black woman, you need to get further into your word and look into the historicity of who your people are before you come on this internet and you try to correct somebody when you are still a pagan yourself. This is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Bye. And just an addendum, I don't know Pastor Stephen Darby personally, don't know his personal life, woo off the bam. I just believe that right is right and wrong is wrong. And there are still some elders in the Pentecostal church that have gone before me that I will never put my mouth on, such as Bishop Norman L. Wagner and Bishop Iona Locke and my late mother. These are our forefathers and our foremothers. And even for those of us who have come into the truth of our identity, woe unto you if you are putting your mouth on the peoples who prayers got you through, and who prayers are more than likely the reason why you were studying and seeking after the Most High the way you were. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We must be wise and circumspect in all things. Bye, y'all.